So we all know that a few days ago, Kenya's greatest marathon and probably one of the best in the world, Kelvin Kiptum, died. But there was a lot of mystery. People were saying like it was kind of like shrouded in mystery. But I went ahead and did some investigations and found out some of the possibilities or some of the factors that might have led to the death of Kelvin Kiptum. Now, all these theories are my own. Okay, I want to mention that. And none of this, I'm not a police officer or anything like that. So this is all by my own observation and investigation. So I hope you all stick around to the end so you can see why my, or you can view my thought process. So yeah, uh, I also want to mention that in my previous video, I kind of mentioned that Kelvin might have been drunk, but I spoke with one of Kelvin's friends. Shout out to Edith, and she confirmed to me that Kelvin was not a did not drink. Okay, so I already ruled that out. Okay, so uh, he was also I also found out that Kelvin started driving in 2021. So he's only been driving for 3 years, which I think is another factor, but not as strong as the ones I'm going to put out today. Okay, so yeah. Now let's go ahead and start by looking at this image right here. Okay, let's look at what's going on here. On my left side, we have a road, and this road is the Route 92 in Kansas City, Missouri. Uh, I thought this was a good example because it kind of looks the same, similar with one on the right, and this one on the right is the B-52, right? And this is the road leading from Eldoret, Kenya, heading towards uh, Cabernet and towards Nakuru eventually. I've actually been on both roads, which is kind of interesting. Uh, so yeah, when we look at it at first value, they kind of look the same, right? They both have they're both curving. Yeah, they're going around a curve, and they both have very heavy vegetation and very uh, hilly. They're both very hilly on the side, but when you look at it very closely, you kind of start to see some very crucial differences, right? Let's start with a few. Let's start with the most obvious. Let's look at the first one, right? Let's look at the median line, okay? This line that kind of goes in the middle. In the one from the Kansas one, in the one from Kansas City, Missouri, we kind of see the median line is very well marked, right? It's much more visible and it's a bright yellow. On the other side, we can kind of see, that there's a median line there, but it's not very there's not enough contrast, so it's hard to miss. It's actually easy to miss, actually. So that median line is not as visible as the one on the left. And this is very crucial. Remember, this accident happened at night. So while we can see it during the day, this one, at night, this one might be a lot difficult to see. That's the first one. But there's more. I want you to look, second, I want you to look at what happens when we go further in front of here. Let's drive in front, further forward, and we can kind of see that there's actually signposts here, right? There's markings on the road that shows you that there's a sharp curve coming ahead, right? But we only see this in the one from Kansas City. The one in Flax, Kenya, there's no such signage to show that there's a curve coming in. Again, remember this happened during the night, and these signs are usually more important during the night because during the day you can actually see the road is going to curve, but during the night it might become hard. Right now we've established that the one in Kenya does not have the signage, but the one in the U.S. has signage. But let's actually go back. Okay, let's drive way back. Let's go half a mile behind. Okay, let's drive right here. And then let's turn, okay? What do we see? What do we see? We see there's a signage here. And this is about half a mile or quarter a mile from the sharp curve. And this sign shows the driver that there's actually a sharp turn coming on. Now let's go back to Flax, Kenya, okay? Let's drive back. Let's try to find something. Now tell me, guys. You guys tell me if you see it, because I've already driven it through here. There's no signage, but let's go ahead and just drive and see for sure if there was one. If I missed none, I still see none, none. Let's keep going back. Now there's another sharp curve coming in, and notice that even the guys who are going in this direction, they also don't have any signposts. Okay, but anyway, let's drive here and let's turn around. Okay, and let's look. There's no signage. There's nothing to indicate that there's a sharp turn coming ahead. Remember, there's a sharp turn way over there, but there's nothing to show that. But let's go ahead and go back a little, because some people might be, oh, maybe there's one behind. Okay, now this is a good spot. Okay, this is more than a mile, almost a mile, and we don't see any signage to show that there's a sharp turn coming in. Now let's go back to where the turn is. Okay, let's go back to the junction, near the junction. Let's drive. Why is it taking so long, man? Come on. Let's go back to where we are. Yep, that's where we were. And let's go back here too. Let's drive about half a mile to right. No, that's not a good spot. Let's go back a little. Let's go here. Okay. Oh, why is there that? Let's go here. There we go. There we go. Okay. I also want you to notice something very crucial. Okay. When we look on the right side, what do you guys see? There's a ship there, right? There's this one here too. So this goes on to show that in Kenya, in the Kenyan road, in the Flax road, there's actually a population of animals that are not being taken care of. They're just wandering by the side of the road. Now this mostly happens during the night, but it's during the day. But it's also possible. Here's my theory. There's also a possibility that when Kelvin was driving at night, there might have been an animal that he tried to avoid. Okay, this is one of my theory. Now that's not all. That is not all. Finally, let's look at the final road structure that might have prevented the death of Kelvin. Okay, when we drive forward to the exact point of the curve. Okay, let's go here. So here's where the curve is. Okay, this is where most likely if a vehicle loses control, it will actually go in this direction, right? Since the curve is kind of look at this lorry. If this lorry loses control, there's a good chance it's going to go outside, veer off the road, right? And this is what happened to Kevin's car, from what I've observed. He lost control and went to this side of the road, right? Because he couldn't make a turn fast enough. So if he was in Kansas City, there was going to be guardrails here to prevent his vehicle from going off the road. But in Kenya, we see that in Flax specifically, there's no guardrails to prevent vehicles from going off-road and ultimately colliding with the trees. Like this tree right here, this is a potential killer tree. Because if, let's say, this vehicle right here loses control, there's a good chance it's going to hit this tree. Now, it's going to be very helpful to have a guardrail, like this one here on this side. But in Kenya, there's two things, right? There's arrogance and there's corruption, okay? And I'll explain this to you. First of all, there's two possibilities why there's no guardrails in B52 in Kenya. First of all, it's either there's corruption or the engineers, corruption and incompetence, right? The engineers who are designing this road, they either chose not to build a guardrail or they didn't notice that there was need for a guardrail. That's the first possibility. Now, the second one is actually ignorance, okay, on the part of Kenyans. Now, I know a lot of times there's a lot of roads in Kenya where I've seen people are vandalizing the guardrails. Like, you know how this guardrail right here. Some people are taking it and going to use a scrap metal, right? The guardrails and the signposts. So that might explain why there's no guardrail and there's no signpost on the Kenyan side. Either people vandalized it and took it to sell it for scrap metal, or it's just that whoever was building the road didn't put it in the first place. But these are the two factors that I think contributed highly to the death of Kelvin and his coach. Now we know one person survived, which is why I want you to bring you to this my second point. Right, I already mentioned that the rod was one of the was one of the factors that contributed to the death of Kelvin. But there's another thing. So I went ahead and did some investigation, right? And I looked at the date at which Kelvin died, and the date in which uh, the accident happened, right? And this happened in Kenya. So I looked at the lunar calendar, and I looked at it on February 11th, right? So when we look here, we find that on February 11th, at night, that night, there was no moon. Remember, there was a new moon. And for those who don't know what a new moon is, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is the faces of the moon. Let me show you the faces of the moon. So there's gibbous, there's fast quarter, there's full moon. Full moon is when the moon is in full sight, right? When the moon is reflecting all the light. But new moon is when the moon is absolutely kind of invisible, right? It's not reflecting as much light. And this is how it was the night that the accident happened. The accident happened when it was very dark outside and when the rods were not clearly marked. So these are the two factors that I think contributed highly to Kelvin's death. I also looked at the wind speeds that night, and I found out the wind speeds were almost. One of the sites told me that the wind speed was 11 miles an hour, which is a significant amount. I wasn't able to find that site again, but yeah, wind can actually contribute to the stability of a vehicle, right? When you're driving in high winds, the winds actually lift your vehicle a little bit, and so that makes it harder to control the vehicle. So yeah, I think all this were contributing factors to Kelvin's death. But there's also one thing. So I've already mentioned one. So in summary, right? First one was the rod was not clearly marked. The rod is poorly maintained and poorly marked. The second one, he was not an experienced driver. He's only been driving for 3 years. So when he was driving, he might have not anticipated or have not. He might not have had enough response time to actually veer the vehicle back to the rod. And third, is the moon conditions that day. There was no moon outside that day, so it was very dark. And there's also a possibility that there was either a cow or a goat, right, or a sheep. Sorry, there could have been a cow or a sheep that he tried to avoid, and this might have led him to lose control. And we can see this, right? We can see it on this image right here. There was some sheep that were just roaming around. I don't know if this was the one. Either a sheep or a cow or even a dog, right? There's a lot of animals that could have been on the road. I want you to see there's sheep here. Yeah, there's also what? I think I also had one more. Oh yeah, there's also a thing about Kenya having very bad response time when it comes to emergencies, right? Here in the U.S., there's a lot of fire departments. There's a lot of EMS, right? I don't know if you guys know EMS. EMS stands for Emergency Medical Services, and they're usually based all across the county. So in the U.S., Kelvin might have had a much better chance of living if there was prompt medical services, right? From what I read, the last surviving passenger, who was the lady, they had to take her to back to Eldoret, which is about 40 minutes, right? 40 minutes by road. And that's a long time when you've just had an accident, an accident. When you've just had an accident, every minute counts, right? If this accident happened in the U.S., they would have been taken to Flux Dispensary, right? And Flux Dispensary, ironically, I want you to show you how Flux Dispensary is literally down the road. This is Flux Center, right? This is the general area where this accident happened. Oh wait, I think let me move my camera here. I know you guys are not seeing. Yeah, so this is where Flax is. Okay, this is the where the accident happened, B54, and this is where Flax dispensary is. It's somewhere here. This Flax dispensary here next to Flax primary. And I know this because I'm actually from this area, which is kind of interesting. Let me. So yeah, so they didn't take them to Flux Dispensary because obviously Flux Dispensary is not well equipped. So they were forced to drive all the way to Eldoret. And that's quite a distance. I want you to look at that distance, bro, from Captagat to Eldoret. It's a long distance. Let's do a quick measurement. By air, it's about 20 kilometers, but by road, it's obviously going to be more. So, yeah, it's a combination of driver error, uh, poor road conditions, uh, the climatic conditions at that time. There was no moon, and just poor medical services. Right, there was just not a fast enough response. The response time was not quick enough. So those are the things that I think led to Kevin eventually passing on. Uh, yeah. What else? So anyway, uh, now there's some people saying like Kelvin might have been killed. That there was somebody. This might have been a staged accident, but I don't think that's the case. Right. I went ahead and looked at homicides that are meant to look like. Oh, I was not meant to see that. You guys are not meant to see that. But I read this article right here that shows accidents that happen that are planned. I mean, there's usually some inconsistencies, right? When somebody's killed and it's meant to look like an accident. And one of the things is there's no skid marks. When somebody's killed, when it's an assassination, there's usually no skid marks or signs of an accident. But in this case, uh, there was clear evidence to show that this vehicle lost control. And I think from the police report, they said the vehicle veered off the road and drove into a ditch for about 100 yards or 60 meters. And that's when it hit the tree. So yeah, I read this article right here, and there was nothing to conclude that Kelvin's accident might have been planned. There was also the case of the four people who were arrested 4 days. No, the three men who were arrested 4 days before Kelvin's death. They were saying like they might have had a role to play in that, but I don't think so. I don't think so. 4 days. I mean, I don't know. It's strange, right? It's strange, but I don't think there's any reason to believe that these guys actually were responsible for Kelvin's death. So yeah. Anyway, that wraps up today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. You can obviously look at all these evidences. It's straight out of the internet, right? If you want to do your own investigation or replicate this investigation or this experiment.